Welcome to Biz Bites, brought to you by CommTogether, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites. And my guest today is going to talk us through the whole concept of leadership, but not just leadership in its ordinary sense. He's going to talk through the whole idea of chaos style leadership. And I think that is, an extraordinary topic to be talking about. His website, Black Market Leadership, and of course, we always include the links later on, has been a huge source of an interesting community. And we're going to delve into that as well as his new book that we're going to preview because it's coming out very, very soon. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Kevin Black to the program. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Look, I've given you a little bit of an introduction there, but that's just a little bit of a resume tease. So give me a bit more of how do you like to introduce yourself?
I introduce myself. I'm a U.S. veteran Army officer who one day read Ayn Rand and decided to do something productive with my life. So I left the Army. I was a professional soldier. You'll laugh, after 10 years of uniform, 4 in the military school and 6 active duty, I had this epiphany, and that was I never liked taking orders from people. So I'm a slow learner, and I said, you know what? I want to work for myself. And what I do since 2005 is I work with companies, usually growth companies. My biggest client was LifeLock when they were about 200 million and went to $1 billion. I work with them, and I usually work with the C-suite. I take executives, I put them through computer war gaming, like a military staff. I teach them strategy, leadership, communication on the go. And I also vet some of their executives. And I've been very fortunate to it's a very, very fun career. And the one thing that I have realized over 25 years of working in the civilian world and in military is that people are rarely ever prepared for chaos. So I know you and I were talking earlier. I started my book 7 years ago. It went through two major transitions because I thought I knew I was writing. I'm like, no. And suddenly I'm like, God, this is chaos. I'm like, it struck me. So I thought for 5 years I was writing it, and I finally got serious. So I took a year and a half off. Literally took a year and a half, no clients, and I went every day to the office. Well, every day, but I didn't write every day. But I did my best to get this book out into my research. This is the first book, believe it or not, this is the first book to measure chaos at the leader team level. So I am extraordinarily excited to get this thing out, and it's called Strength in Chaos.
There's so much to unpack there, and I want to delve a little bit more into your background in a moment. But firstly, just this whole idea of that's the start of the title, Strength in Chaos, right? So where does this idea of that actually being a part of leadership? I mean, I've heard chaos theory and the idea of chaos being around is as old as time, but the idea of strengthening that and leadership coming from that. Talk to me about how that concept comes about.
How does it come about? I would tell you in all my years, going through different leadership programs, no one ever tells you, hey, the people in your group are probably going to overthrow you if you don't show strength, if you don't exert yourself. And by the way, if you exert too much strength, you're going to cause crisis and chaos on your own people. You always learn to make a plan and to drive it forward. What people aren't prepared for is that plan is going to fail. There's going to be major cracks, and you got to overcome it. You have to be adaptable and make up as you go. Some people like myself, hey, I love that. I can do that, but that's not important. What's important is the team. Who are you working with? So in my experience, most leadership programs don't even talk about this because it suggests failure. But the fact is, chaos is inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable because the fact that we could think beyond the moment, that we could plan for the future, and the fact that we have to deal with this nasty thing called reality that has gaps in our expectations. We think it's going to take an hour to get to work, but it takes 2 hours. Why? Cops, inclement weather, a UFO, something distracts us. It takes us off course. This is history. This is all history. And why are people shocked that this really should be a part of leadership development? It's not just follow me and influencing. It's about overcoming crisis. People are going to pull their hair out. They're going to try to take you over, take your position. They're going to try to challenge your authority if you don't maintain control. And the one thing that I've realized, and I think it's deeply unpopular, but I think it's absolutely true, control is a necessary, essential element of leadership. You have to control your team. And if you don't control your team, you're fired. But the question is, how do you do that? And what I have discovered is if leadership's about control, people are largely uncontrollable. You got to influence them. Hopefully, they're going to do what you want them to do. So the question is how. So these thoughts, these ideas have been percolating for over 2 decades, and then one day I just sat down and started writing it all down, and I created a roadmap of what it looks like, how to pinpoint where your team is in chaos, how to anticipate, predict what's going to happen once you're at that point, and how to redevelop teams to overcome it, to gain strength. And when I say strength in chaos, what I'm really saying is exceeding expectations when the odds are against you, when uncertainty is surrounding you, where most people fail. That's what a real strong team is. It's not this inverted morality where strength is enduring pain. It's about taking reality and making something, going around the obstacles, going over the obstacles, making sure the team does it in an effective, efficient way, over and over, repeating success. That's what strength is, in my view. So I'm bringing a different viewpoint of strength, if that makes sense. It's not about surviving or enduring. It's about thriving. But that means doing the hard stuff and learning about what it takes to lead a team when things don't go to plan, always go according to plan, which they rarely do.
I mean, does a lot of that come from the military background? I mean, because if we, the truth is that as organized as the military can be, it is still chaos when you actually get onto a battlefield. It never goes exactly according to plan. And somehow I gather also, I haven't been in the military, but having spoken to many veterans over the years, that there is that you do have to find that strength, don't you? Because it's not just strength on the battlefield itself, it's to thrive beyond the battlefield, which is an interesting one. And we'll talk about some previous guests that I've had that are thriving as a result, but there are many that aren't, of course. So is that where some of this idea is embedded in?
Absolutely. There's probably 150 years of business history in terms of management theory, business books. There's over 2,000 years of military history. And I think it was the German, it was the Prussian General von Moltke who said, I'm paraphrasing, he's like, once the first shot is fired, the plane goes out the window. So armies have always good armies, good leaders have always recognized that plans rarely ever go according to plan. And in fact, I would tell you, because it's so ingrained in us, and I say ingrained, it's because of the way we think, the fact that we can think beyond the moment, we can plan ahead, but there's so many variables. People do things you wouldn't think they do. The competition does things. It upsets your plan, and how do you react? I've been shocked that when you read military history, this is really common. And it's the failed military leaders who make these really, really deliberate, thick, phone book thick plans for battle, realizing that once the enemy goes left instead of going right, which they should have gone, it's off the window. You got to restart over. And so you can see how that can not just affect the leader. And I say strength and chaos. It's not just the leader who has to be strong. It's the team. The leader's responsibility is making the team strong. Who cares if you're an effective leader? If your team doesn't perform, you lose. So it's almost a reorientation to your duty. It's not you, the leader. Your job's not to be the rock star. It's about making sure the team is the rock star, that they are capable of maneuvering, of acting on their own initiative, even against your directives if the situation calls for. So how do you do that? And that's a lot of discussions right there. But that's really the essence. How can teams navigate and show initiative and adapt to situations, even if the leader's not there?
Yeah, it is a really interesting one. I mean, I was speaking to someone recently who is the leader of a business, and she's getting married and she's having a child. and she's like, how do I let go? And we were having a chat about it. And, I actually challenged her. I said, right, I think she was about 6 months along when we had this discussion. And I said, take 3 days off, see what happens. Turn your phone off and give them a worst case scenario if they really need to get in contact with you, but just do it and see what happens. And the business survived, and it's going to thrive without her. So which is fantastic because she's positioned it well. But I think the whole idea of leadership, I think, is a really difficult concept. I hear that term being thrown around all the time. I hear it from little kids, like from in school. You're going to be a leader. You're going to be a great leader. And it's like, really, is everyone going to be a leader? I think it's a term that has got muddied and lost as to what it actually means. So, and I think it's important in what you're talking about here. So, how do you define leadership?
So, I actually have a definition, and before I get my definition, I totally agree with you. Leadership has it's either a cult of character, a cult of celebrity, or it's become a sacrosanct, as if it's a religious, the lead or the shepherd. I see it completely different. I see leadership as a role. And if you're not fit for the role, then you shouldn't be there. But it's about actualizing a vision, accomplishing a mission. But my definition of leadership, I'm going to say it's one sentence, but it's 4 parts. It is the art and science of influencing others to actualize a vision in the most constructive manner, practical. And all four of those parts can actually be explored. But there's a science and it's a body of knowledge, 2,000 years. But it's an art because each of us have different behavioral profiles and we stylize that art differently. It's like you and I reading a book about sharks, and we read a book about sharks and they say, hey, your mission, our mission is to write a similar book. You and I could have the same education, Anthony, and yet you and I will write differently because of our natural behaviors, our education, our experiences. That's that stylized application. I say it's influence because the opposite of influence, as I write it, is obedience. You're demanding compliance, meaning you don't want people to think on their feet. You want them to pull levers, to act mechanically. You're like the chess master for a chessboard. Well, guess what? When friction comes, when the fog of war comes and your competitors start doing things that you don't want them to do, or your people start leaving, your talent starts leading, you got to act. Your people have to act without you. And if they can't act without you, you're dead in the water. So you have to influence them. You have to, I hate this word, motivate. You have to inspire them. You have to establish the kind of trust where they are willing to show discretionary effort, to go above and beyond because they know you have their back, to make those decisions on the ground that can affect the strategy. Now, how they do that, that's a whole nother thing. And the big thing is really, it's actualizing a vision. And I say this, it's not accomplishing a mission or accomplishing a task. A vision is big and broad. You can have millions of tasks involved. You can have thousands of missions involved, or maybe a couple missions, whatever. But people know the general thing, what you're going for, what success looks like. You're giving them the permission and you're empowering them to act on their own. And that's key here. If people can't act on their own, they're waiting for you. If they're waiting for you, the pressure is just going to increase, and that's going to really cause what I call destructive chaos. So that's a long definition, but I think you see why I did
it's
that.
A really important one because I've felt this myself as well, that buying into a vision, it's often given. I think that's one of the things that happens a lot in business, that it might be the leadership team, it might just be an individual CEO or a business owner that sits down and works out the vision of the organization, and you deliver it to the rest of the company, and you just hope that they buy into it and they all just kind of nod their head and say yes. But it's very different to them actually buying into it. And I think if you don't get those people right in the first place and have them attuned to your value, to a shared set of values, then ultimately it's not going to work, no matter how great the people are individually at their jobs. And I know we've even experienced it as a small business myself, that we recently sat down and reworked the vision, and we've actually our vision is really more or less summarized in one word, and the team have started to really buy into that. And I think that makes a huge difference, because it is definitely that struggle of being able to take people along for the ride, that allows you then to see if they will buy into it, because that, if they share the vision and they share your values, then leaving them alone should say, well, we know what we've got to be doing because we're all on the same page.
Or yes, I totally agree. And, one of the examples that I was debating putting in the book, I haven't, I have a hole in the book that I have to fill, but one of the examples I think of is Disney. Disney is just, Disney is in level 4 destructive chaos. It is wrecking itself because 30 years ago, its vision, I don't know the exact vision. I don't remember what Walt Disney wrote, but in essence, it's a family entertainment business. 40 years ago, if you would poll the nation, both political parties, they hate each other, but 90% agree that is a family-oriented business. And now, modern day, half the country thinks that, is a place for adult entertainment, to say that. That vision is being wrecked. So that vision exists, but the people have not been brought onto it, or the wrong people have been brought into it to subvert that vision. So that vision takes you down a certain highway. That's what's really important. And if you have a good vision, first of all, you got to know exactly who you are and what you're really good at. Because that vision is just you in the future. But if you don't do that hard work, then the vision really means nothing. It could just fall apart. And that's where the idea of control, if people feel like there are holes or opportunities in that organization, that things aren't filled or things are unclear, they're going to fill them. They're going to fill them with things that probably you don't want. That's why that vision statement, really, really important. Not highfalutin, but something very simple that makes sense. This is who we are. This is what we're really good at. And this is where we're going to be in the future.
Yeah, and I think equally, in terms of leadership, then it's not just your team that you're taking along for the ride, it's your clients. They're the people that ultimately you have to lead, right?
Well, yeah. You're partnering with your clients, and your clients hopefully are working with you because they understand what you stand for. And if I ask Joe over here or Sarah what the vision of the company is or what the company does, and they can't answer that, why would anybody work with me? That just shows inner confusion.
I think so. I want to go to the second part of your of the title of the book. That's talking about. I get this right. Guiding. So it's guiding. It's give me the right title.
A leader's guide to mastering the uncontrollable.
Right.
And the uncontrollable is both. Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say that the mastering the uncontrollable, right? And what is really interesting about that is the uncontrollable bit. And I'm sure like you spend a lot of time, whether it's reading books or attending seminars or having coaches and the like, that talk about really controlled scenarios. This is how you have to do things, and this is the time that you have to do things, and we'll organize this into, divide the year up into certain things, and you follow this structure. And I just sit there most of the time and go, yeah, that's good in theory, but am I really at that? Can I really afford to be at that? And I think that whole idea of uncontrollable is underestimated, because every day is uncontrollable, right? How many of us walk into the start of a day and go, these are the 3 things I want to do today. And you get to the end of the day and you go, I didn't even look at that list. What happened?
Well, I think there's a cultural reason. The fact that we're in the West, especially in America, we live on a system of scientific management for the past, since 1900, the progressive state here. There's an underlying premise that you can anticipate the future. And think about this, manufacturing, the car manufacturing, that's car, but the fact that you have assembly lines, that requires science. That requires management. It's about managing the process. And if we do A, B, and C, we know D, E, and F will happen. That is in the roots of the West. And think about it, people get PhDs now. You get a PhD for telling me how many feathers Napoleon had in his hat. It's so minute, it's so detailed, and there are borders. Only feathers, not, I'm not studying the lapels or his jacket. It's just the feathers. It's so, There's so many mental restrictions and borders. It's so cautious that when you tell people uncontrollable, no, you can't say that. That goes against literally our cultural DNA. And for a fact, I mean, Anthony, how do you tell an engineer who has a PhD, who's been in his company or been in the industry for 30 years, you know what? You really can't control things. He'd be like, I spent my whole life doing it, studying this. You're telling this person to go against his own personal belief system. So it's extraordinarily hard. And so to get people to create flexible strategies, you have to put that kind of certainty in it that says, you know what? If this doesn't happen, we're going to go A, or if this doesn't happen, we're going to go to B. You got to put some kind of safety measures, control measures in the planning, even in the philosophy that assures people that even if things don't go, they go awry, we can still gain order. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be a single lane highway, but it'll be a multi-lane highway. We're at least going in the right direction. I feel like I went on a tangent right there, but that is a really, really important point because there's so many people here, especially in leadership studies. When you plan A, B, C, and D, and E, well, your planning really is we start at A, how do we get to F? We may not get to B or C, but we got to get to F. How do we do that? And that's where contingency planning comes in. You got to know the people you work with. Some people like the chaos. Some people like the improvisation. Some people detest it. They want harmony, a methodical approach, very deliberate approach. They live for that. How do you get those people to get comfortable moving forward with that sense of uncontrollable factors?
Yeah, it is a hugely interesting topic, and I think even taking it on a further, on that is that here we are in a world that is utilizing AI and automation and in such a way that it's trying to control everything. And the interesting thing about that is that if someone comes to you as a business and you have a fully automated system and they want something that's a little bit different, how do you deal with that? Because
a little bit of risk.
Yeah. I mean, do you just go, well, they don't fit into our very unique bubble, so goodbye? Which creates opportunities, of course, for new businesses to come and find that space. I think there's become this reliance on this idea, and it is, in a sense, creating a chaos around it, isn't it? Because there are people that are just going, no, I don't. That I'm not going to respond to that very narrow idea that you are only giving me this choice.
The technology you speak of, it's so fascinating because we have so much information, so many capabilities at our hands right now. We have so many opportunities. But what happens is when you use AI, not when you use AI, but when you over rely on AI or this technology, you're eliminating risk. You're subconsciously developing yourself to avoid risk. Well, guess what the uncontrollable is? Guess what chaos is? It's about, sometimes you got to make it up as you go. What you got to do is prepare before you do that. I would tell you historically, probably one of the most fascinating examples that goes to this story is you should read, for your audience, you should read about the American and German Army officers, their education during World War II. The Americans, actually, I'm going to back up. The Germans, which is so fascinating, because of their geography, they're surrounded by enemies. The Germans always believe that you have to win a war fast because we're gonna have France on one side, Russia. We gotta beat one opponent, then the next, and get it over with. We can't maintain a long war. So what they says, you can't plan for the future. There's so many uncertain things. But what we do is we make it up as we go. That's why our smartest people, go to the front. We elect them on character, not logic, not your GPA, but like the football player, the soccer player, the people who have the grit, who can go around, who can take the beating, keep moving. They would select those people as their officers because they knew they could improvise. They had to. The Americans, on the other hand, because we live in the industrial age, our smartest were based on logic, GPAs. We think of the IT nerd. That was the ideal officer. And those people went to the rear because they would do signal, they would do communications, the things that enabled process, that avoided risk. So there's a fantastic book for your audience called Command Culture, and you see how these people thought and how they planned. So you wouldn't be surprised then that when the Americans, even today, when officers or units would do like a war game, Americans take us a scenario. You start here at Monday and you end here on Wednesday, and it ends here on Wednesday at noon or at midnight, and it's just a slip scenario, and it made like slice of a battle. The Germans, on the other hand, during World War II, when they trained officers, they would start a huge war game. Go, the war starts, finish it. Could take a day, could take 2 days, could take a week, but it was about it. You see, just the mental orientation it takes to accept that kind of risk. So that's why in World War II, again, very some history in World War II, the German army was they were 150% more effective than both the Americans and the British at every instance, because they were able to adapt and improvise. Except though, they lost the war because they didn't like that whole thing about scientific management and managerial. They all their leaders died in the front. They sent the best to the front, and they couldn't sustain a long competition. So those mindsets really, really, really affect how people act, how they plan, really everything about the company, even the culture. Do you reward people for breaking rules, or do you punish them?
Yeah, it opens up a whole can of worms here, and I wish we had a few hours to keep digesting this. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to touch on with that, because you talk about a lot around obviously your military influence is huge, and leadership in that way, and without getting into the politics particularly, but is the upcoming American election. Basically, on one side you've got chaos, and on the other side you've got very controlled, because it sort of needs to be because of who the person is. I mean, I just look at as an outside observer, is that a fair way of describing the two different styles of leadership?
So I know what you're asking, and first of all, before I answer your question, when I say I measure chaos, I have a chaos model. There's good constructive chaos and destructive chaos. Each constructive chaos is like eustress. It's like working out. Destructive is distress. It disintegrates the power of a team. Level 1 destructive chaos. Level 1 is called disunity. Okay, that's where your team, for whatever reason, doesn't want to work together. I knew this question would come up someday, and I would say this. My book, you can find parallels, but I talk about teams, leaders and teams. The United States, our country, is not a team. We're a group. I don't care about my neighbors. I have my own goals in life. If California sank, I live in Arizona. If California sank, I wouldn't care, because I don't like California. You can probably tell. To answer your question, both politicians, leadership is about control. It's the different type of control. Some leaders create chaos because they tighten control over the team, because they fear that chaos is going to things going to spin out of control. So they tighten things around them, and by tightening rules, restrictions, they dispower. They take away power from people. People are not. They don't feel free to act on their own conscience, on their own accord. So they can go from what I call mechanical compliance. They just come in to collect a paycheck. Malicious, where like, oh, you want to do that, boss? Sure, I'll do it for you, because I know you can get fired for it. Or deliberate resistance. That's where the control is so bad that people literally sabotage you and try to destroy. So politically, what do I think? I don't know. Probably national divorce. Or a third American Revolution. The second was a Civil War. So who knows?
Yeah, we won't get into the politics of it all, because that will take it all. But it was just, as I said, it's just it's an interesting. We live in an interesting world at the moment with these different kinds of leadership. I think is there, and I think the stuff that you're talking about is very. There's a shift, I think, that's or a divide at least between those different styles that's existing, and it's not just in the US. It's happening.
Well, what I say? I wouldn't necessarily say it's different styles. I know what you're saying about style, but I would say it's different focuses. Over here, one party is about government control. The government has the final say in everything. And like that's New York and California. I mean, the government literally just steps in and interjects into individual rights. There are other states here that actually say, you know what, they say we want to control, but it's minimal. It's minimal to keep the government going. And we want people to exert the rights, and if people get offended, oh, well. So it's really two types of control, at least two different focuses. One is, pro-government. The other is pro-right, pro-individual liberty. And that really is, I would say, the focus. So when I say, national divorce, if there ever is, you find like Texas, Florida, the states who are probably doing the best, the more free market, they would probably work together. And the more centralized, New York, New York, California, you can on the coast. So it's funny. You can see the different orientations, but there probably are some lessons for chaos. But luckily, I wrote something that would keep me the hell out of that.
Yes, we'll keep it more into the small medium business area. That's probably the safest space to be than in politics. I wanted to just change tact a little bit for a moment, because we touched on in the beginning a little bit about your background and being in the military. But tell me, what was the journey for you? What was your childhood? What did your parents do? What was that kind of influence that happened? Because I'm gathering that you didn't, high school days, you weren't necessarily picturing what you're doing now.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a general and fight in battle. You could probably tell I'm an intense guy. So I grew up in the deep South. I grew up in Georgia and Atlanta, and your audience may not hear it in my voice, but there's certain words that I say, like because, and you're gonna laugh. People say cement. I call it cement. And where I grew up, every soda is called Coke. Hey, Anthony, you want a Coke? Yeah. What do you want? I'll take a Sprite. So I grew up in the South, but I was a 4-year. I wrestled in high school. I was about combative sports. I went to the Virginia Military Institute, which is basically West Point for the South. I was there, and this is interesting. I was there when the Supreme Court made forced us to have females come in. That school had 157 years of all male. So I saw chaos from the college days as a cadet, saw it in the Army. I volunteered for the war. They sent me, and I got to see amazing things. But after 6 years of active duty, I saved up like 50 grand. I'm like, I'm done working for the man. I'm gonna work for myself. So I took a year off. It was so great. I enjoyed myself. But then I had this idea about, hey, I love playing war games. I love philosophy. I love history. How about we use computer wargaming to help students learn about history? And I explained this idea about having people come play the war games and learn things from it. Explained to a family member, like, I should go to colleges with this, and they said, hell no, go to companies. They'll pay big money for that. So that started my career with these companies. And my favorite client was LifeLock. I was with them with 200 million. They went to $1 billion. They used my strategy template, and I can tell you that the permission, but the wargaming, the experience, the learning of strategy and leadership under pressure, it gets so fun. It's so intense that the first time I did this, I had a chief marketing officer punch a founder in the face. So what happened is, not only are my workshops educational, and you take that template to use it for your company, it's also a vetting system, because I get to play, you might say, the bad guy. I can have a group of 10 people, and Anthony, you're the VP of sales and you've missed 2 quarters. Guess who brings it up? I do. I bring it in front of everyone, and you and I have a come to Jesus meeting in that. So the chief executives who hire me, they love it, because I get people on the train, I get people moving forward, and usually we have one casualty per workshop. Usually someone is removed because they don't get on that train. So I love what I'm doing, but I love chaos. It's such a fascinating story. In my book, I cover 8 different historical examples going from the ancient Greeks to modern day. And I show you how each of these levels actually apply. So there's real universality to it. And that's why I'm hoping that this book could support business owners, founders, and even the military. I think I can imagine senior military colleges bringing this book in, because again, there is no book that measures chaos like that.
I'm really looking forward to reading the book and understanding, particularly, we've hardly even had time to touch on the whole idea of measurement of it, and it's maybe something we've got to come back and have another crack at. I
Sure.
want to ask you though, particularly for the small medium business owners that are out there listening to this. Give me a tip or two for them. What is it what are some of the things that they should change in the way they're thinking that is going to attune them to this idea of that you're putting across?
Well, if we're talking about an experienced business owner, they know that, no matter what strategy or plan you has, it usually goes right to hell once you cross the finish line. So many good people leave because there is no direction and order. The fact is that no matter the type of training you go through, under current circumstances, nothing is preparing you for chaos. So what I would say is, if you really want to gain a competitive advantage in terms of execution, you have to learn how to create a professional team. And I say team, I don't mean company, I mean teams. Chaos is measured at the team level. That could be a business function like sales. It could be inside sales, outside sales, but you have to focus at the team level. Your people have to know how to plan flexibly, how to put the right people in the right roles. There are a lot of things that don't come naturally. Just, you're in a leadership position, we should do this and this. I provide a roadmap. So I can say, if you're interested in flexible planning, if you're interested in getting competitive advantage, I can show you how to create the kind of culture, how to hire the right people, how to get the right people, how to put the right people in the right teams, and how really to make sure that your team can pivot faster than your competitors. Because believe it or not, there is an art and science to it. And that's why I'd say there is an art science to chaos. And if you're looking for support, I can support you.
And on the subject of that, I mean, it's not just the book. I love the play on your name and go give us the title of the website, because it's a great play.
Oh, thank you. Black Market Leadership. And believe it or not, I got trademarked. I got, who the hell gets that? I know, Black Market Leadership. And the book, though, if you're interested in the book, is called thechaosbook.com. I got that too. Don't ask me how. The gods were on my side, Anthony.
Yeah, it must have done brilliantly, because that is they're both two good gets. But I when I saw it, I went, oh wow, it's just like that's a great name to get to be able to play on, of course. So look, I love that, and we're going to put the links, of course, into the show notes, so people have an opportunity of how to get in contact with you. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, because there's so much to unpack, and as I said, I'd love to unpack that whole idea of measurement as well, because it is, and just as a bit of a tease, I think measurement is such a difficult thing these days, and anyone that's in marketing knows that measurement is ridiculous. I'm in the business of helping other people put podcasts out there, and we should also mention that you have an amazing podcast as well. So we'll also include a link to that one. But the thing about it is people ask me about podcasts, and they say, oh, how do you measure it? Is it just the amount of people that's downloaded it? I'm like, no, it's not, because there are so many other factors that come into the equation, and we won't go into that now, but that's the thing, isn't it? That whole concept of how you measure anything is just a really difficult idea. And we have this burning need to measure things in this day and age, particularly social media, that instant gratification that we want to get. How many people have liked us? And that measures the degree of popularity. And it's not that simple, is it? And I imagine that measuring things in terms of chaos is not a straightforward thing, and something is going to take a bit of time to go into.
No, it's the approximation. And if you're looking for a score of he is at 3.-7, it's not like that. It's a general field, but I tell you, it's a big field, and as long as you're somewhere around the right area, you can find out. But you can get a leg up just by having that. So. And by the way, I got thank you so much for the podcast. I have an affinity for Australia. I think I told you my whole life I have owned Australian cattle dogs. And by the way, the genesis of that, when I was a kid, I watched Mad Max 2 Road Warrior. Like, that is a cool looking dog. So we have Australian cattle dogs. I got one by my feet as I talk to you right now. So they're interesting little guys. But man, I have a total affinity for that side of the world. So I appreciate you reaching out and having this discussion with me.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the program, and well, I hope you'll come out to Australia and come and visit us, because it would be amazing to hear more about it, and maybe you'll get a bit of a world tour with the release of the book. I hope it works out that way for you, because there's so much to unpack.
I got to pet a kangaroo. You got to help me. I want to pet a kangaroo. I hope he won't kick me.
You can do that. Yes, you've got to find the right ones. You don't want to approach the ones that out in the wild that might engage you in some kind of battle. That definitely is chaos. You don't want to do those. They are strong. You'll not end up in a good way. Yes, there are some classic videos somewhere on YouTube. I remember years ago, someone a kids TV program, and someone out there will put in a comment and a link. But there was I think he was dressed in a sumo style suit and took on a kangaroo, and that was not pretty. So it's not something you want to do. All right. Well, look, Kevin, again, thank you so much for being an amazing guest on the Biz Bites program, and we definitely want to have you back in the future. There's so much great information for business leaders out there, and I love what you have to say. So thank you for being a great guest.
Oh, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. And great podcast. I look forward to listening to it. And if I can ever do it again, let's talk more about chaos. So thank you.